Hello, my name's Jack and I am the Collections Access Coordinator here at the Brunel Museum, where I've been since November when I started to volunteer, and as a paid member of staff since March. So I wanted to talk about what is probably my favourite object in the collection, which is actually a pair of shoe buckles. Not really what you would kind of expect from a museum about engineering, but when I started to volunteer it was one of the things that piqued my interest when I was wandering around the collection. Because I couldn't quite understand why the museum had them. They're a pair of, we think, silver, small shoe buckles from the late 18th century and were owned by Marc Brunel and given to us by one of Brunel's descendants. So when I first came and looked around the collection, I was quite surprised to see that there was something like this on display. And so I decided to kind of look into it a bit more to understand sort of a bit about why Brunel had the buckles, where they came from, why he would have kept them. The interesting thing that I found is that when Brunel was born in 1769, buckles like this were worn pretty much by anybody who could afford them, men and women. But that by the time he died in 1849, they were deeply unfashionable, and most, if not everybody, wore laced shoes. The question I then kind of had to answer is, why did he keep them? What was the point? What did they mean to him? I did some more digging and kind of found that there were contemporaries who were remarking on the fact that Brunel wore quite antiquated clothing, and so clearly he was walking around dressed slightly unusually for the time. So it's well known that Brunel was a dedicated monarchist and that he was caught up in the French Revolution, which started in 1789. In November 1789, the French National Assembly, so the revolutionary government, decreed that all of its members would give up their silver shoe buckles and would melt them down to help the war effort. And in the next few months, lots and lots of French citizens did the same. There were entire registers of these silver shoe buckles that had given up to the state because they were running out of money, essentially. So there were a series of kind of pamphlets, both pro and anti the revolution. One of the anti-revolutionary pamphlets is entitled "Give Us Back Our Buckles," and there's actually a response to it that was printed that kind of ran through a list of things that had to happen first before people could start wearing silver shoe buckles again. I'm pretty sure whether or not Brunel kind of had these buckles while he was still in France or not, one of the things that he'll have been thinking about when he retained these buckles was that kind of revolutionary period, changes in dress that were brought on by the revolutionary government. I mean, when we think about kind of French revolutionaries, we call them sans culottes, which is literally a term without breeches that refers to the fashion choices that they made. And so I think that for him, these buckles probably had quite a special significance in a political sense, even though that's quite hard to imagine these days. So what's kind of next in these buckles story? We're really excited to say that we recently have been offered support from the Costume Society in the form of a Daphne Pollard conservation grant. And so the buckles are going to go for conservation work, they'll be cleaned and stabilised, and hopefully when you next come to the museum after we've reopened in a new form in 2025, they'll look very different, much closer to the way they would have once looked, much shinier, they'll catch the light in different ways, and their kind of refractive effect will be much more obvious. So please come, please look out for them. Hopefully you won't be able to miss them because they'll be nice and sparkly in a nice corner on their own.